Hello, and welcome to episode 114 of Design Curious Podcast. I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. Today on the podcast, I have the wonderful Laura Martin Bovard. She is an interior designer in the Bay Area close to me. They have a building in downtown Oakland that houses their design firm. Laura is principal designer of LMB Interiors, which was launched in 2002 when she was pregnant with her first child at her dining room table. She has quite a journey she's going to share with us on the podcast, but she runs this great design firm that focuses on sustainable design, which means working with local artisans and contractors, earth-conscious materials and practices. And she is also known for being the divine hustler, which is her other side hustle that she does speaking events and retreats and has a blog about personal growth. She is a personal growth junkie for sure, which I definitely love about her. And she wants to help other beauty makers discover more about themselves. And so you can find out more about her in the show notes. We'll have links to all of her things there. It's just a joy to have Laura on the podcast today. So let's talk with Laura. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hi, Laura. Welcome to Design Curious Podcast. It's great to have you today.
Hello, Rebecca. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. I was saying offline earlier that I was familiar with who you were before you even reached out because I've heard you on other podcasts. And I think that you have a great perspective and great insight for our audience today. So first, I'd like to start with how you got into interior design in the first place. What was your journey to becoming an interior designer?
Oh, I love reflecting on that journey. It's been so informing for who I am today. I think one of my teachers in design school said, you're either born with designer genes or you're not. And I didn't quite understand what she meant, but over the years, I've hired a lot of people, and I can tell the ones who are really do it from their soul versus from their head.
Yeah.
You know, there's just something innate in us. I like to call interior designers beauty makers because interior designers don't just make homes beautiful. They tend to make most of life beautiful. They know how to curate. Really, right?
Yeah.
And so as a child, when my family moved around a lot. My dad was in the military and we moved many times. And every time I would really get fixated on fixing up my room and would help my mom figure out where to put the furniture. And over time, I think that just became part of who I was. But then I had a roommate. She was an older woman who actually worked for an interior designer, and she was very French in her ways. Like she just put every meal together beautifully, every room. And she used to joke that you can't decorate with athletic gear. Like, so I put my skis away. And she really groomed me, not just in interior design, but she started to expose me to culture and kind of a broader view of the world. And then I ended up going to UC Berkeley as an English major, not sure what I was going to do at all. And during that season, I had a therapist I was working with, and she would listen to me talk and watch my energy, how excited I got talking about decorating my apartment. And she said, have you ever thought about being an interior designer? And I had heard of interior design, but I didn't really understand what being an interior designer was involved in that. And maybe had I known, I may not have ventured down that path, knowing that looks very glamorous up front.
Yeah.
But all the parts behind the scenes that you don't see on Instagram, I mean, people are starting to share more of that, and how HGTV and other shows like that make it look like anyone can do it. Yeah. And I don't believe that actually. or to do it well and to do it consciously,
Right.
right? To
Yes.
be thoughtful in our creative process. So anyway, she suggested it and asked if I had heard of Martha Stewart, and I'm definitely dating myself. But at that point, I had not. She was very new on the scene, and Martha Stewart Living had just come out maybe the year
Mm.
before. So I started to get curious about it, and it took another 10 years before I stayed in the restaurant industry all those years, supporting myself and my family. And I had a waiter friend say, "When are you going to just take a class and stop talking about it?" And you know, when a stranger says that to you, it's like a big pattern interrupt. And that was
Yeah.
the moment I said yes to it. And I started going to design school. And about three-quarters of the way through, I was pregnant, and my design mentor was retiring. And
Mm.
she said, "I've got a couple projects I want you to take. I think you can do it. I think you're ready." And I had to make a decision at that moment. You know, was I going to, I couldn't stay working, going to design school and taking projects, you know,
Mm.
so I
Yeah.
decided to just launch full into
Yeah.
this one project, and I made more money off the sale of one rug than I did in a whole week waiting tables. And I was like,
Mm.
I was bit by the bug.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was 22 years ago in
Okay.
May. Yeah.
Okay, so you never completed your program?
No, I went almost all the way through, but really at the heart of it, I am a beauty maker and I'm a great creative director. I'm really a strong entrepreneur and
Hmm.
I know how to hire well. And every time I hired a new person, they brought new skills. So we shifted from doing, I don't recommend this for everyone. I have to say, it was like learning by fire, really, because I just dipped my toe in slowly though with the interior, the specing materials packages and learning
Hmm.
construction. And I wasn't
Yeah.
unfamiliar with it. My family built a home when I was a kid and I
Okay.
started getting exposure, but I've hired people who can do things I can't do. But I know how to
Yes.
read plans and I know how to draw and I know
Hmm.
enough. And that at this point, I'm far surpassed anything I was learning at school just from being in the
Hmm.
field all these years.
Yeah.
So we do both. We're a full service firm. We start even with before ground is broken sometimes on projects and carry it all the way through to the napkin rings. So
That's great. So you said you were a strong entrepreneur. Are those skills that you had to learn? Was it something you were exposed to at a young age?
I was not exposed to it. I'm kind of a driven personality type, and I think partly fear of failure and being in my survivor sort of forced me to learn quickly. I joined a networking group, and I was in that group for 9 years, so I was learning
Mm.
from all these different trades,
Hmm.
aspects of their business. I hired a financial advisor. Probably the first person I hired was an expediter office
Mm.
manager
Yeah.
who I have ADHD, so I make mistakes and I can be
Hmm.
forgetful. So I've had to put structures in place to support me. And then ultimately, probably the best hire of my life was our studio director who's been with me for 12 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
she's my soul sister, and she and I run the business together. I mean,
Okay.
ultimately, it's my company, but she's really a huge part of it. Have you heard of that book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer?
No.
So essentially, it chronicles his life where he started to override his decisions of his personality and just said yes to the opportunities that came along and said, I'll just figure it out.
Hmm.
And in hindsight, I read that book recently and I was like, wow, that's how I've lived my life. I have just
Oh.
surrendered and I didn't ever say, I can't do that or I can't figure it out. I would just
Hmm.
find the right people to help me figure it out.
Hmm.
And then if I made mistakes, I would pay for them. And
Hmm.
I would, in a lot of ways, ended up nurturing a lot of long-term relationships with my clients because we take care of people till they're happy. I want to say with one caveat, like if they're kind,
Oh,
if
yes.
they become toxic or anything like that, I just
Hmm.
find a way to leave with the most integrity to myself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a part on your website that tells the client that finding the right designer is kind of like a dating process. Like the designer needs to work with you, you need to work with the designer. And so you got to find the right fit for you. Not every person is going to match up with
That
your
is a
aesthetic. Yeah.
100% true. I believe that with all my heart and soul because There's so many designers, especially in the last 10 years. It just seems like somebody's becoming a designer every day without really
Mm-hmm.
a lot of experience. And
Yeah.
it's like even when you're starting out and new, taking a project just because you need the money will always end up resulting in a bad match down the
Yeah.
road. You'll have problems. And I learned that through trial and error, obviously, but you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And you can
Mm-hmm.
language that in a way. It has to be win-win or no deal kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. So, what are some things as you were starting out your business that you felt were really beneficial to you as you were learning the ropes and kind of diving in, actually?
I think being willing to override my insecurities of being new and feeling like I had to prove my value and my worth. So I would, there is a certain amount of time before you feel like you can raise your rates and move out into the world in a bigger way. But I think networking and relationship building was probably the best thing I did early on. And I have found what I've realized is whereas Instagram and sending out a monthly newsletter, which I've done now for 18 years, I've written a blog every month.
Mm,
I think that it keeps me relevant and the clients see my name even if they don't read the post.
hmm.
Having that solid network has really served me very well and just being kind and friendly to everybody because you
Yeah.
never know who's going to potentially turn into to a client. And the
Right.
other best thing I did was start to hire professional photographers to photograph my
Mm,
work early on.
yeah.
I didn't do it myself because everyone can always tell that just the quality of it is not the same. And I think
Yeah.
that that created a brand that looked professional and respectable, even though back then I was probably only selling a couple $100,000 a year. That's
Yeah.
in gross volume, right? That's
Hmm.
not yeah. So
Yeah.
networking, relationship building, really good website, hiring the right people, and being scared and doing it anyway.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell a little bit more about the Divine Hustler. And also, we were talking earlier about how designers are kind of similar people for the most part. They're usually perfectionists, they usually are codependent or people pleasers. And how can we develop a healthy way to run our businesses and still have sanity and
Oh my gosh,
happy clients?
I can tell like when the question is asked, I get goosebumps. It's so
Mm,
exciting for me to talk about that aspect of it. Divine Hustler was sort of like a alter ego that I created to help me be more brave in the world, like to start to dress more authentically, to start to just become more of who I wanted to be, even before I was really ready to be that person.
okay.
And a lot of it has to do with it is a diligent daily practice of self-care. And it took a lot for me to find time for self-care back when I had a newborn and a
Mm,
3-year-old,
yeah.
4-year-old back in those early days. I just, you know how it is. Like the house is always a mess. You're drinking from a fire hose. I was running my business out of my dining room. I was, I hadn't figured out how to deal with my ADHD yet. It was crazy. But still, I started going to one exercise class a few days a week and inserting yourself self into places where there are women who are taking care of themselves. And by the way,
Mm,
some of those women became early clients,
sure. Yeah.
so that was like an accidental thing I never saw coming. But I think that the self-care practice really becomes a spiritual practice of finding whatever that higher power is for you, be it God, goddess, creator, infinite source, universe. There's a lot of names that we can put to that, but to find your own personal relationship with your higher self and really nurturing that regularly started to build so much more self-compassion and more of a full cup so that I could serve more. Because when women are filled up with their own good stuff, then you're not doing the dishes out of resentment. You're
Mm,
doing them out of service to your beautiful family. then pretty soon all of the resentment starts to transform into truly acts of service. But
Mm.
we can't do it if we're not really nurturing and serving ourselves first. And so Divine Hustler started to become more of who I am. And now I am the divine hustler. Like
Yeah.
I was hustling so hard, born out of that thing you were talking about, perfectionism, codependency, overgiving and not charging my value, fixing problems that weren't my responsibility just because I
Mm.
wanted to take care of the client. And it was a
Hmm.
lot of chasing after proving to people that I was of value. And when I brought the divinity practice in, probably at this point, 15 years ago, it started out very slow and it's really intensified the last couple of years. And
Okay.
the magic that is happening, it's something that takes time, it takes commitment, it takes faith
Hmm.
and really believing that we actually do have everything we need to be the creators that we can be.
Yeah. Yeah, because when we're being creative on behalf of our clients, like we're giving ourselves in, pouring ourselves into these projects.
Yeah,
And it is important to renew that source
it
where your
is.
creativity is coming
Yeah,
from.
and it also strengthens setting boundaries,
Mm.
speaking truth, educating them up front about money. Like money's a big one. A lot of us have a really hard time raising our rates
Hmm.
and letting the client know, I'm going to bill you for fixing problems. If you would
Hmm.
have had to pay the vendor, if you would have had to spend your time as your project manager, I spend my time and I will bill you for that time. I
Yeah.
used to give all that time away and being
Yeah.
transparent about what we mark up.
Yeah.
I was hiding out behind that a long time, not putting my markup in the contract, sometimes languaging it in a way that was sort of like diffusive, not clear. And I got bit in a bunch of times doing that. So
Oh.
now I'm super clear upfront. I don't
Hmm.
want surprises.
Yeah, I love transparency too with my clients. That's just, this is just the way it is. So take it or leave it, you know?
Right.
So,
And that can be
yeah.
hard
Yeah.
when you don't have projects.
Yes.
It can be like, oh, I'm just going to rationalize taking it because I need to keep myself or my team busy.
Yeah.
But if you wait and stay true to what's on your list of who you want to work with, ultimately, I don't know how to say it, it just ends up working out.
Hmm. So good. So you have retreats where you take women to like Tahoe and places
Oh my
to
gosh,
learn
it's
about this,
so
right?
fun, Goddess. It is like the highlight of my year to host these retreats. The last one was in June. And
Hmm.
I'll be honest, I thought I was really, I mean, we have wide range. We have had people brand new to the business. I have two designers that have come to two of the retreats, this one and the one last year. One of them is 70 years old and has been doing this for half her life. So we're always learning and growing and expanding. And I think that this industry, if you're working for yourself, is isolating. We don't
Yes.
have a sisterhood really. And that's what these Divine Hustler retreats are about, is like coming together in community, learning from each other. And we mostly do talk about transforming our shadows, the parts of us that are scared or haven't into the light yet, and how we can move through ego and into love
Mm.
doing these tools and practices that I teach. And this last time I got COVID. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to cancel this retreat. And I called every woman, and I was maybe day 5, 6 by the time
Oh,
we
yeah.
started the retreat. So, but I was still really not my full self.
Oh,
But it was a blessing because I could relax that overperformer, overachiever part of myself and let it unfold organically.
mm.
And at the end of it, we were all in tears. We did not want to leave. It was like spiritual summer camp.
Oh,
Yeah, it was very fun. So, and we're all, we're on a thread. We check in.
okay.
These women are all emailing and texting each other about what do I do about this contractor? What books have you read? What's inspiring you? It's a support system that I don't think enough of us have, you know?
Yes, design is pretty isolating because a lot of us are solopreneurs or, just have a small team. It really is nice to have that support behind you.
Yeah.
So that's great that you're offering that. Yeah. So is it usually the same people coming every time, or is it a new group every
No, we
time?
we
Or
often have a couple of returning designers. And it's not all designers, by the way. I've had realtors, I've had event planners and
Oh, okay.
stagers and, all kinds of
Creative types.
creative types. That's
Yeah.
why I say beauty makers, because it's kind of a
Yeah.
catch-all term that is a good umbrella for anyone who's serving others from their hearts.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you label yourself a personal growth junkie. What are some other ways? I mean, besides the divine hustler, obviously you're always renewing yourself, but what are some ways that you find that you're pushing yourself to grow in your business or in life as a designer?
Well, as a designer, I never thought my kids are a little older now, so I'm acknowledging that I have less mommy duties than I did when they were younger and I was starting out my business. I hold my quiet alone time in my sanctuary as sacred time for myself.
Mm.
And I don't start a day without, and I mix it up because if you know who do you know who Joe Dispenza is?
No.
So Joe Dispenza he's a metaphysician, quantum physicist, and a neurobiologist. And
Oh.
he talks about when we have habits and routines, the body becomes the mind. And so it's important, like once you start in with a practice, that you mix it up a little bit. Even though I do meditate every day, some days I'll do breath work first, some days I'll journal first, some days
Mm.
I'll wait to have my coffee. So I kind of have various structures. I jump on my rebounder in the sunshine every morning as often
Nice.
as I can.
Yeah.
To get the energy going, I put on my AirPods and go into our garage, which is a gym, and I dance like a crazy woman because the universe responds to the energy we're putting out. I
Mm.
mean, it's the opposite. So many people wait for the evidence and then they're happy. But you have to
Hmm.
be happy and loving and good connector, and then that frequency will find you in the field, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when the real magic starts to happen. And that's when
Hmm.
you stop being just a hustler and you start being a divine hustler. For my team, we do just to keep growing and expanding, we have retreats once a year.
Oh,
We
nice.
open up every Monday call with a connection and checking in with people and how they're doing. We have a napping sofa in our studio where
That's
we
fun.
have yet to see too many people nap on it besides me,
Yeah.
but I have no shame in that game anymore. I'm
Yeah.
just like, if you need a rest, take a rest.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah. But I am forever reading. Like one thing Wayne Dyer, I heard him say when I first started this personal growth journey, like
Hmm.
25 years ago, turn your car into a university on wheels.
Yes.
And I have literally turned my life into a university on wheels. I don't listen to media. I'll put on When God Speaks affirmations and listen to that while I'm doing the dishes or making
Hmm.
dinner, or when I don't want to hear my husband and my son talking about politics, I'll just put something on and replace things that I don't want coming into my field with optimism and joyful
Hmm.
things.
Mm.
And I'm very serious about it. Like, I don't hold space for complaining, and
Yeah.
we don't complain around here. We look for what's the solution? I mean,
Hmm.
we have to feel the feels, right? You need to
Sure.
get that out. But then at a certain point, when it starts to turn into a story, that's when we kick into complaining, and we
Mm.
just don't do that. We don't do that around here.
Yeah, that's really healthy with the boundaries and also just creating the life that you're wanting and making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the positive energies. And that's a really good mindset to have that you're not like the victim of the circumstances. Like, we might have terrible day on site with the contractor or a challenging client and you can still choose to be positive in spite of all of those things. Yeah.
You can, and I'll be the first to admit it is really hard when you're stuck in that victim mindset. Those neural pathways are so fortified. It started in the womb if you had a mom who felt like she was victim to her life in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's in the lineage. So
Hmm.
I think we are here to heal the lineage and not just our own lives. I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing this for humanity at this point. And it's hard at first. That's why the regular practices are so important because
Hmm.
when those neural pathways are so fortified that you got to literally jump the track. And jumping the track is breath work, meditation, journaling, oracle cards, talking to a sister goddess who will remind you of who you are, like that.
Yeah. Do you ever bring this into your designs for your clients, like encouraging them to have meditation spaces? Because as we are thinking about how they're living in their homes, or I think you do commercial design too, but you're kind of recommending them to live a certain way as well. I feel like,
Yeah, I think it's part of our brand at this point.
yeah.
A lot of times we're working with people who are in the hustle culture of just working so hard and not prioritizing master primary bedrooms, not
Hmm.
prioritizing quiet zones. And I just weave it into the conversation. And sometimes a light turns on and sometimes it doesn't. But
Hmm.
I don't chase after them with it because I don't want to be off-putting.
Yeah.
I've really
Yeah.
shifted from show, don't tell more so, and I write about it on Instagram. I write
Mm-hmm.
about it in my blog posts. I just
Mm-hmm.
share from my own life the value of having spaces like that. A room of her own is more valuable than a man cave, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone should have their quiet
Sure.
space,
Yeah.
but yeah, we talk about it a lot. And I think people report back their lives are changing because they're turning off the screen and spending more time in their library, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. I love that. Oh, what great information for us today. So, if you had anything else you wanted to tell maybe an up and coming designer who was, like yourself, not listening to what was in their DNA to become a designer, but decide to go for it, what would you recommend to them?
I would say expose yourself to culture. Travel as much as you can, write about it, talk about it, weave your stories of your own curation into your marketing material. Like really establish your brand as trustworthy, warm, welcoming, and skilled. And the way we do that is documenting and
Mhm.
sharing or talking about other people's work that inspire us. But this is not an isolated sport that we're playing. We really need community, whether it's
Mhm.
each other or finding networking groups that can help you see what you can't see. I thought I was done with networking groups and I'm about to sign up with a CEO group because I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
We're always learning and
Yes.
growing.
Yeah.
And when you need rest, just take it.
Hmm. That's great advice.
Go for walks in nature, drink clean water,
Take a nap.
take a nap. Just curate everything in your life, from your
Yeah,
friendships to your food to your design magazines to your what you listen to. Yeah,
that's
just be a
great advice.
curator
Yeah.
and it'll take off.
Yeah.
Stick with it.
Well, that's great, Laura. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and your designs and the Divine Hustler?
Well, I talk a lot about spiritual growth stuff on my TikTok channel
Okay.
at Divine Hustler. For interior design stuff or anything, you can DM me either on LMB Interiors or Divine Hustler. I'm on both on Instagram.
Okay.
And I'm very happy to answer. I'm better at interacting socially than via email and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really fun for me to interact with people socially, and I'm here to be of support. I just really want women to know, and men too, to a certain degree, although I haven't hosted a men's retreat yet. All my gay friends are asking me to. But I would just say reach out and
Yeah.
check in with me. I would love it. And if anybody's interested in the next retreat, we're about to launch early enrollment. Probably do it very late spring or early summer this coming year. And it'll be at that same insanely gorgeous house on Lake Tahoe. And it'll be beautiful. It'll sell out probably quickly.
Yeah.
Now that everyone knows about Spiritual Summer Camp, we all want to be there.
Right. Yeah. What a
Yeah.
way to start off the year, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for being so generous with everybody with your mentorship and your wisdom. And so, yeah, and thank you for coming on
Yeah.
today.
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for what you're doing.
Oh,
Because if I had had people like you when I was just starting my business, I would have felt so much relief. Like there's so much access to asking design community. The interior
hmm,
design community on Instagram has been a really helpful resource for me, but it's available if you want it. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah. That's why I do it, because I wish I had it when I was
Right? Isn't
starting
that
out
what
too.
happens?
Yes.
We start to pay it forward. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Laura. It's great talking with
Thanks,
you.
Rebecca. I really enjoyed our chat. I hope you have a great day.
You too. So, what an interesting story. It's great talking with Laura today. I really love her personal growth focus and journey and all that she's doing right now. So, definitely go and check out her contact information, which is in the show notes for you. That is all we have for this week. Next week, I'll have another great episode. Of course, if you are looking to work with me a little more, you can try my mentorship program with my design mentor. Also, I have a lot of freebies for you, some downloads, a quiz, so check that out as well. I will see you next week on Design Curious, and until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.